Hmm. Great, thanks. Hmm. Well, before we get started, what kind of music are we talking about?
I would just call it ambient for the
Nice.
most part, like electronic ambient and a lot of horns. That's my primary instrument is the tenor saxophone.
Hmm.
So using synths and keyboards to create more like ambient background, kind of Brian Eno-ish, but I would say a little even more melodic.
Nice.
But not just one drone and then doing um, horn stuff over top of it.
Sounds good.
I like it.
Nice. Awesome. Well, let's sit for a while. Um, See if you can find a way to both lift the chest and relax the upper back so that your head is naturally planted between your shoulders. Just gently lift your chest. Nothing special, nothing forceful. Both raise and open your throat so that you have a clear path for your breath. It's totally unobstructed. The, the raising your chest in that way often allows your shoulders to sort of go slightly back and out. So let that happen. Maybe make a brief, subtle effort to frame your shoulders that way, and then just relax them. Let them not exactly slump, but relax where they are. So we're going to do a little bit more breath stuff later, but for now, just put your attention in your hara. Take take a nice breath in and then slightly lock your hara, which is to say contract your lower stomach muscles and the muscles in your pelvic floor, your perineal muscles and so on, and let the breath fall completely out of the body, however long it takes. And then when you need to breathe in, just keep your attention in your hara, but allow the breath to flow in and fill your body. Relax any tension in your hara. Just let the breath come in. Do the out breath again. Notice on the out breath that if you breathe in that way, it naturally aligns your upper body and might naturally actually relax your hips a bit. It promotes a kind of straightening of the posture. And then allow the breath to come in. And do that again about 5 times. And then just let it go. Just let the breath be what it is. But keep your attention in your hara. Keep a little bit of additional emphasis on the out breath, every breath. Now that things have settled a bit, here's a thing to try. This is drawn from a sort of a koan that's drawn from a commentary record. Idea is on every out breath, again, emphasize a gentle emphasis on the out breath, a little bit of extra tension rather than the sort of root lock, your perineal muscles. Hmm. Allow the breath to collapse as though it's being pressed out by a smooth, warm stone starting in your upper chest. And while that's happening, subvocalize, let go in your mind, the two-word phrase, let go. You don't have to repeat it over and over again. You can just hold it there in your mind. When the breath is all the way out, just stop doing anything and just be there in that moment with the breath all the way breathed out, and the body is still, really, as it almost ever gets. And then when it's time to breathe in, lift your heart a little bit, but keep your attention there. It's as though you're breathing in from your hara. And on the in breath, in the same way, just hold in mind the phrase, two-word phrase, trust completely. And let the breath come in for as long as it wants to. Slowly, surely filling the body, realigning posture, the breath, staying, not lifting the chest, and then again on the out breath. Let the breath fall out, and let everything go. When your breath is at the bottom of the cycle, there's nothing else to do. It can be tempting when you're exercising the out breath in this way sort of with the eyes drop closed a bit on the, near the out breath. I'd say focus on keeping them open, at least in a relaxed way, and also keeping your hands wide all the time. Where's the conviction come to trust our experience? Mm, it's odd because people are endowed with this sort of magnificent array of sensors and this wonderful mechanism for managing, responding to, and delivering to our awareness various sensations and according to some scheme that involves classifying them as unpleasant and important, unimportant, um, exciting or not, and so on and so forth. It's amazing. We can study all of that pretty directly, at least from the sort of that macro point of view, just by being awake, paying in this continuous way. In a lot of cases, our first impulse is to argue with our experience. This isn't how it's supposed to be. This is not what I had in mind. This image, another experience that I would rather have. How does it happen to us that we can somehow implicitly trust our experience, even if some parts of it circumstantial nature of experience need improving? It's like Suzuki Roshi said, perfect just the way you are. But, you could be so simple and perfect and so at the heart of life and practice. More trust mind for this sense and notion of conviction. How can we have conviction about the nature and process of our actual experience, even if in some constructive way, according to our narrative, our self narrative, or our judgment? Hmm. Sensations arise, become perceptions. And just the way we flag them, or pattern matching, and our actions related to our agency, our perceived agency. Mm, just watch to bring forth kind of unconditioned appreciation for the process. This is the art of living. Art of it. Let's walk a bit before we sit back down. So you know what to do. Just turn to the left and start walking. Right? All right, let's sit back down. So, any questions? Anything on your mind? Anything in particular about practice or this practice or anything we were doing today? Anything up?
Just with the like the prompt, the trust completely and let go. It was interesting to work with it. It kind of felt like a lot. Yeah, it just kind of felt like it almost initiated like a thinking process. Like, what does that mean to trust completely? Kind of to me, so like, what does it mean to let go? Or is this breath the process of letting go? Which didn't feel bad, but it almost it was like an extra layer.
Yeah.
Like silence in itself almost feels like it's full enough for me usually, and then I was like, oh, there's like this other thing to carry or whatever. But
Yeah, I think you know there's a whole dialectic in meditation practice between different kinds of effort, technique, and just sitting in the sort of most straightforward sense of the word, which I think I've talked about this before, but you know, usually the Japanese term shikantaza is translated as just sitting, but if you look at it, it's kind of a funny phrase. It means something like the one of the characters in it means like it's like striking a bell or something like that. It's that act of striking, that act of connecting or something like that, right? And so you could argue that it's more like just completely being engaged in the act of sitting, right? Thorough engagement in sitting, and yeah, that's enough, right? If you add, in fact, it's more than enough. If you add in some sort of technique or thing to carry with you while you're sitting, and you know, lots of people do this, including whole schools of Zen practice. The Rinzai school famously has this set of techniques around koan practice that involve, among other things, actually vocalizing, not just sub-vocalizing the the sort of key phrase in the koan while practicing with it and so on. That definitely adds something in, and it's more to carry and in some sense juggle, right? The invitation of it is to give over to and just thoroughly inhabit that as well, right? Yeah, it's you're right. You can get spurred into thinking about it by, particularly, it's like what Jiaozhou said about speaking. He says, yeah, the way is easy. You just don't pick and choose, right? But the minute you're speaking, you're picking and choosing. So even doing something as simple as intoning internally, or just holding in your mind the phrase "let go," kind of can provoke a question, as you said. This is actually letting go. Or what is the nature of letting go? And then can also promote a kind of self-critical inner dialogue. I'm not really letting go enough. So yeah, that can happen, right? The end result of all, or not result exactly, the end state of all forms of effort in Zen practice, including all the stuff I was talking about with internalizing words and phrases from the literature and so on and so forth, is making a effort that tails out to absolutely no effort, right? And to explore the way that even at something as elaborate as intoning something internally on the out breath and intoning something else on the in breath, noting the way that even that can push over into complication, or can tail out to nothing, to no effort, right? It's because fundamentally there's nobody really doing it, right? When you really take it in and open to it completely, there's nobody doing it. It's just something that's happening in the tangle between experience and cognition in your mind. That's all. But yeah, it's a great question, and it's a great observation. There are always these complications that accrue around the techniques involved in meditation, and that includes techniques as simple as breathing, right? It's almost everyone, I think I've talked about this before, but almost everyone in the process of learning how to sit runs up against struggle with breathing, with the dynamic between control and just plain awareness, right? And similarly with posture, right? There's a lot of dynamic stuff going on with the posture every time you sit that can be a cause for struggle, right? But it ramps up substantially if you involve words and phrases. So anything else?
Yeah, I can resonate with what you were saying as far as it's kind of the same thing as just sitting. It's kind of the same thing as breathing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's felt a point of, and it wasn't like I reached a plateau and wrote it out, but at times felt a sense of more openness, more of kind of a observing
Mm-hmm.
that didn't feel as tangled or attached to
Mm-hmm.
the prompt.
Yeah.
That it almost felt a little bit like more lived.
Yeah.
Than like, what is this question? How can I? What does that mean? Kind of all these layers, but like,
yeah.
Right here, this in breath is
Yeah.
resting completely. Right here, this in breath is, or the out breath is
Letting go.
Letting go.
Yeah.
So that I can resonate with that sense of it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, in the end, I think for most schools of meditation, I'm not sure if this is true universally, but certainly in the Zen school, the practice is both enacting directly and also practicing in the sense of doing over and over and over again this activity of turning towards experience, right? And allowing the mode of engagement that we all carry around with us of just unloaded broad receptive awareness, right? To kind of float up and take its natural place in our awareness, in our awareness. And it's useful to find the set of techniques that makes that practice fruitful and comfortable for you, right? Whatever works well is good. And I mean, my experience with people that do Zen practice is that if you ask them how they meditate, everyone has their own set of things that they do, because the instructions generally are pretty simple and open-ended, right? So, which leads me to, I had a Zen story I wanted to talk about. This is a pretty good time to talk about it, but so in the Blue Cliff record, Suyan it's the summer retreat, and at the end of the summer retreat, he's giving a talk, and he says, I've been talking with you guys for all summer. Do I still have my eyebrows? What are my eyebrows looking like? And Baofu, I don't know if this was a commentary at the time or whether he commented later. It's not clear from the text, but he says, "The thief's heart is cowardly." And Changqing also comments again. I don't know if he was there. Probably not. He comments later and says, groan. And Yunmen says, barrier. So I guess the first thing to say about that is that the whole thing about the eyebrows, there's a lot of stuff about eyebrows and brows in the both in the lore of Zen and in the culture that gave rise to it, right? So I think there's a sort of Pinocchio myth in Chinese culture, or at least there was at the time, that if you tell lies, your eyebrows will fall out. And so basically, what Xian was saying was, "Hey, my eyebrows still here? Have I been misleading you guys all this time?" And it's a good question, right? I mean, and as a teacher, you'll know that it's a question that really touches on the nature of teaching. And so the when Baofu says the thief's heart is cowardly, he's pulling up this metaphor that shows up a lot where the idea is that every teaching, and particularly every effective teaching, is an act of theft, right? What you're essentially doing is you're reaching into the mind of an aspiring student, or just a plain old listener, and you're pulling out a piece of their original mind and you're replacing it with something that you made up. And it's a little bit like, there's this scene in I guess it's Raiders of the Lost Ark, but it's anyway, it's an Indiana Jones scene. He's going to steal this crystal skull, and he gets through all these traps, and he finally gets up to the skull, and he pulls out a bag of sand that supposedly weighs exactly the same as the amount of the skull, and he goes whoosh, and he picks up the skull and he drops the sand on it. And in any case, his thing didn't work, and all these traps were sprung, and he had to run out, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's basically like that, right? So he's being called a thief, and also they're saying he's kind of chicken about it, right? And of course, like all negative commentary in that in this particular literature, if you really insult someone, it seems it generally tends to mean that you think they're okay, right? But it nonetheless points to this question, like, okay, so if you want to teach somebody something really important, how do you do it, right? It is it sufficient just to say the words? If you really get their attention, and so that they're going to really take it in, how that's called in some places in the literature, it's called gouging a wound in healthy flesh. It's like you're giving them something to work with that they might not actually even need. And I mean, my experience with going to Dharma talks, and I've listened to a really huge number of Dharma talks, right? Almost all the times I've gotten in bad and sort of bad trouble while practicing, and gotten frustrated or other, run into really serious difficulty is when I hear a really good Dharma talk and something from the talk really lands for me, and I'm like, okay, that's how it should be, and I will go and put that into practice now. And I go and I work at it for a while, and then realize that actually it's just causing me to struggle. And the funny thing is that if at that point I can kind of let go of it and not fiddle with it so much, sometimes it actually turns out to be useful. But there is that thing where often teaching can be, particularly in the context of a study like Zen, can be a source of difficulty, right? So like theft, right? But obviously, the teacher in any context doesn't really have any choice. What are they going to do, right? And so you have to embrace it and lean into the secondary in order to help people. That's all, right? And so Chongqing says grown. So he's saying, yeah, your eyebrows are longer, right? Related to this whole mythology about eyebrows, like one thing I've noticed is that if you watch old school kung fu movies, the eyebrows on the real masters are often gigantic, right? And I think it's related to that. So the idea is that, that Suyin is growing a really massive set of eyebrows, which might be a compliment and might not be, right? And then the last thing is Yunmen says barrier, right? And I think what he's pointing to there is that this question, right? Can I trust my experience? Can I trust teaching the Dharma? Can I either rely on it, maybe, but also trust it in the sense of just trusting the experience of being alive and hearing these words and generating the response that I'm generating, right? Can that be the heart of a human life, right? And that's a question that you kind of have to resolve for yourself. And it's one of those questions that's naughty and difficult, right? Because again, as I was saying earlier, it's easy to get into a rut where you suffer from, doubt and vacillation, basically. So, sometimes, so kind of, pay attention to your eyebrows. It was great sitting with you. It was really, really good. Thank you.
Can I ask you to say the koan again?
Yeah, absolutely. So Tsuyen, at the end of the summer retreat, he says, he's talking to everyone and he says, I've been talking to you guys all summer. Are my eyebrows still here? And Baofu says, the thief's heart is cowardly. Chongqing says groan, and Yunmen says barrier. So that's the story. And I think it's like, is it case 8? Hold on. Yeah, it's case 8 of the Blue Cliff record. Yeah. So you can check it out. Yeah, thank you. Turn this off.